I appreciate our tourism community. I appreciate our hoteliers.
But yet you're pushing people out of their community to put them where? It's time for the communities to start winning some. I want you to make our city better.
Ivy is definitely worth saving.
The following show and broadcast is a production of Better Savannah, an independent expenditure committee dedicated to better policy outcomes at the state and local level. The views, opinions, and statements made by the hosts and/or their guests do not necessarily reflect the views of Better Savannah.
What's up, buddy?
You, dog?
I hear you, John. Guys, it's John and Chuck. It's another episode. Hard to believe. I keep saying this. Episode 63 is what this is going to be. This is going to premiere. We're recording this on the 13th, but this is going to premiere on Tuesday the 19th as episode 63. And I told you it was good luck that we recorded during the Braves. They ended up closing out that series, and probably will be singing the blues a little bit more by the time this premieres, but maybe we'll get some good luck and some October miracles. What do you think?
Well, I stayed up till midnight watching the game last night because I had recorded it, and you and I were doing the Port Wentworth first show.
District 1, right.
And, man, it was a thrilling game. The Brewers and the Braves are so evenly matched as teams. It was just fantastic watching the tension between two comparable teams. Now, to your point, yes, the Braves won, but the way I understand it is they're going to have to face either the Dodgers or the Giants.
And what was the win differential in the season?
Both the Dodgers and the Giants have won 108 games or 9, and the Braves have won 82. So, yeah, it's, hope springs eternal, Chuck. It's a lot like politics here.
We live to play another season. There's always pitchers and catchers report in 200 and some days. So I was thinking, this is kind of like a week in Port Wentworth for us. We had the District 1 forum last night. We went live. Tomorrow we'll go live with the district. I think it's 3 or 5. I can't remember. I think it's 5. Maybe it's 3. I think it's 3. So we'll go District 3 tomorrow live with some candidates there. But we're going to close out kind of this week in Port Wentworth with this episode's titled PTW at Large, so Port Wentworth at Large. and we're interviewing the challenger candidate, Joe Smith, who is running for the Port Wentworth City Council at-large position. And we have, I think this is going to have been an interesting few episodes of conversations, because I was remarking how the challenges are both very different and very much the same in terms of like the growth in Port Wentworth is really in the last 10 or 12 years. And, poverty's not necessarily the issue. Crime may be the issue some places in it, but not really the leading issue. It's really one of our core issues, John, which is growth, all types of it. So, I think this series of 3 episodes in Port Wentworth, politics for this city council race, is very beneficial both for Port Wentworth, but I think for everybody in the community, the regional area here, to kind of learn each other's very local issues, but understand how the overarching issues that we're advocating for at Better Savannah fit into each of these local areas. What do you think?
Well, it's a fascinating comment, Chuck, because, when some of these candidates in these smaller municipalities started to reach out to us, to Better Savannah, initially I was like, holy smokes, man. Savannah, I know. Chatham County, I know. And my friend Matt Kitchens, who you were good enough to run his spot for us,
of course,
is running out there at Tybee. And I thought, man, I don't know that much about Tybee. Same thing, Port Wentworth. I don't know that much about Port Wentworth. And now Garden City people are asking for time. And anyway, my point, not to belabor it, is once you scratch away at the surface, you realize they've got this, to your point, the same problems, the same structural process, good government problems exist, whether you're, a 300,000 Chatham County perspective, or whether you're a little tiny 3,400 person community like Tybee. We've all got the same problems. Now, you pointed out that they've got little unique things, characteristic to themselves, and that's fine. But I was thinking that it was going to be much harder to do a good job and understand the deals. And man, it's same problems, different. It's 12 miles away, got the same problems we got here. So
absolutely, and I think a lot of the things we're advocating for are regional issues. We talk a lot about CETA and the ports and tourism and all these things. They're really, really regional issues. And so I think the more we can see progress at the municipal level, I think the better it's going to be. So with all that said, I just want to go ahead and welcome in our guest for tonight for episode 63. It's Joe Smith. She is running for the at-large council position of Port Wentworth, which is on November 2nd coming up here. Early voting has already started. Joe, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down with us. Welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for city council this time.
Thank you, Chuck. Good to meet you, John. I am a businesswoman, a business owner, and I love Port Wentworth. I first was exposed to Port Wentworth a number of years ago and said, this is where I'm going to retire. And I did. One thing I see is exactly what you both were talking about, is that the growth is exponential and it's almost going too fast. It's going too fast because, in my opinion, the leadership, it's outgrown the leadership. All right. The leadership, people who've been here 1, 2, 3 generations, but sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. And I tend to, as a business owner, have a 30,000-foot view. I look down and I see things holistically. And I have business skills. I have strong business skills. And I see a lot of things on the council are just done so much better if you have anybody with some business chops in there. And one of my slogans is I've negotiated with CEOs and senators. Put me at the table. I think they need an adult at the table who is not intimidated and also who has run a business, because a city is similar to a business, similar to a nonprofit business. I've dealt with huge budgets. I also, fortunately, know a lot about working with the different levels of the government, because the way we are right now, a lot of the money is, as you know, coming and will be coming from pandemic relief funds. And it so happens that's one of my strengths. Is I owned a company that did over a dozen contracts with state governments, and I work with federal governments, and I can deal with and I understand the mind-bending bureaucracy, and I know how to get through it, and I know how to get us the money, and that's something they need, and also just business skills. An adult at the table, talking with some of the developers, talking with the ports, the airport, et cetera, et cetera. They don't even have a liaison with the ports, an official liaison capacity. So that's why I'm running.
That's really
concise and great answer. That was a great answer.
Thank you.
I think we should tell our viewers, we were talking in the green room before going to air here, that I was sharing my, 30,000 foot view of Port Wentworth, and it really seems like a city that's kind of archaic, kind of sleepy, kind of rough around the edges, no consistent direction or leadership except status quo. And then bam, the census comes out. Now you guys saw it coming because you're there, but for me, who I'm not there, all of a sudden the census says 100% plus growth, and you got more coming. I mean,
oh yeah,
your government and your systems and your policies have no choice but to catch up with the times. So
exactly. Well said, John.
Yeah. Chuck, you got a policy question?
No, go ahead with our overarching question that we always ask these candidates. I'm trying to find some of the census data while you're doing that.
Okay. We're a little baffled what the poverty rate is in Port Wentworth. Joe, if you happen to know, share it. If you don't, Chuck will be looking it up.
Well, it depends where you look. I've looked a couple different places. We are below Chatham County. We are well below Savannah, and we're well below the metro area. Poverty is not a huge issue here. Growth is our issue. So I've heard 12%, 18%. The other night, I think Alfonso said even way lower than that. You just hear different numbers, but I do tell you it's low, and a lot of the crime rate is low level, and even traffic violations that are misdemeanor type things. That's not our issue here.
Okay, well, I'm still gonna seek.
Generally, I'm seeing here. Let's see. I don't know how to get the share screen back, but I'm seeing like I don't know. This is hard with StreamYard here. I'm missing. Let's see. Let's try it again. There it is. I'm seeing like 3 to 4% on poverty. 3.2, 3.3.
Yes.
On another one. So I was amazed that that's not really the issue. The issue is not necessarily poverty, especially deep poverty like we have here in Savannah.
No.
Right. But the growth that's not paying their fair share, which is hurting the region as a whole, is impacting Port Wentworth disproportionately, I think, is kind of the conclusion we're coming to. Does that sound right?
I agree. I think everybody here agrees with that. I've never experienced a place that has grown so fast. I think we're an anomaly in that aspect, that in terms of growth. And I know the census has come out, and like you said, we all seen that it's doubled in 10 years. But if you talk to a lot of realtors around here, it's really doubled in 6 or 7 years, and it's still growing. I mean, you cannot go into a subdivision on the north side without seeing one house being built to a house that's right there and selling as quick as they finish them. So that absolutely. We are a middle class, upper middle class area, and poverty is not a big issue. Crime's not a big issue, but the growth is everything, and everyone feels it.
Well, you're blessed to have those very positive, low crime and poverty numbers, and I guess maybe the art of what's ahead of you is how do you keep them nice and low and still enjoy greater prosperity for the community and providing the things that communities want, whether it's libraries or sidewalks or parks. I mean, that's what growth is. And let's talk about growth, Joe, for just a second. Experts, planners, the smart people down at MPC, college professors will tell you that growth in and of itself doesn't pay for itself. What they mean is that the property tax base that results from a residential unit being made provides funds for your M&O budget, your general fund. That is, you can pay salaries and whatnot with that. But it does not really give you enough to do your capital projects, your big ticket items. So
hence all the splosh, you see.
Yeah.
Those are usually capital.
Yeah, here's the crazy thing. Savannah, I'll do this by way of example. Savannah is woefully short on cash for affordable housing concepts, whether it's workforce housing, homeless housing, or just standard fare affordable housing for everybody else. And they keep taking SPLOST money to do stuff like redo River Street, redo Broughton Street. Okay. If they had impact fees, they could use the impact fee money for the parks, the recreation, the streets, the water infrastructures, which is what impact fees are limited to. But that frees up your cut of SPLOST. So every dollar that in capital project need that you can extract from an impact fee frees up $1 in your SPLOST funds, which you could use in our case for affordable housing. So how do you feel about? I guess you guys don't have impact fees currently, right?
No, and John, I want to tell you that's a really, really good point, because to add to that, because I was on a SPLOST committee where I used to live for a number of years. It was an ethical oversight committee to make sure that the SPLOST funds were used as per the law. And as you know, the SPLOST is very narrowly written, and there's an education SPLOST, there's a capital SPLOST, and in it are real restrictions on how you can use the money. Impact fees can free up, take some of the things from the SPLOST and vice versa, and then you can use some money for affordable housing. I happen to like impact fees. No, I think pretty much. Hopefully it will pass. It's hard to say as an outsider because I'm not the incumbent, so I'm not privy to a lot of information. But I know they've been talking about it, and I'm for it because. There's a lot of corporate tax credits that companies get when they build, and so that helps mitigate it. It helps mitigate a lot of the issues.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing from, at least in Savannah here, is a slow roll of the process. Like, oh, we're definitely going to get to it. It's in the works. Every time it gets brought up, and we're working on this cumulative comprehensive thing as part of it, and there's this deadline, and this. I see that the institutional powers know that it has to come soon, but I feel like. For sure, in Savannah, it feels like they're holding it until election time, about a year and a half or so from now, John. But that may be what's going on there. I think you've got a two-pronged thing with impact fees for Port Wentworth. You've got the residential side, which is growing very, very fast, which means you've got to constantly deliver services to that growing number of population. And then you've got the industrial commercial side. And this is one where I think is much more pressing. I think the former is also an issue, but I think it's an issue medium range term that you got to get on it. I think the industrial encroachment, from various people I've spoken with, it's an immediate threat today. And so, when we've reviewed impact fee schedules from around the state of Georgia, especially in the suburban areas of Metro Atlanta, which, let's face it, Port Wentworth is a suburb of Savannah, right? It's a suburb, right? Definitely. Nobody would disagree with that.
You're sort of the Sandy Springs of.
If you wanted to build a warehouse like you guys are, doing in Port Wentworth all the time, you're talking about $500,000 to $1 million in upfront impact fees because of the challenge it takes on infrastructure. So generally, politicians are afraid to take this head on because developers tend to bankroll elections, and you got to work with these people. Half of your agendas will be zoning changes for developers over the course of your term. So how do you resist that influence? This seems to be a good old boy system in Port Wentworth right now. How do you change that status quo? Speak to that for us.
You put it very well. It's a good old boy system. The city council is run by people who've been here 2 and 3 generations and are concerned and focused on historical downtown Port Wentworth. For example, my opponent, whose position is at large, and I'm running for at large for the entire city. I think even a guest on your show last night said she never comes on the north. She's never crossed over the highway to come up here. She's never gone past the, Sonny Dixon interchange. And, but it's an at-large position for the entire city. And I think there's a lot of infighting in the city council, quite a lot of immaturity. And part of it is where you live. And I think that warehouses are not necessarily evil or good, because you got to remember, a lot of our citizens make their living through either working in a warehouse.
They have to be managed.
I'm sorry? They have to be managed. Truckers, you will see coming home at rush hour people with reflective vests. And so you can't say no to warehouses. Also, if you're going to say no to warehouses, never, ever, ever order off Amazon for the rest of your life.
No. We understand. Yeah. Growth is a good thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's not a bad thing. But it's a good thing and a bad thing. And you have to balance it. Exactly. You have to manage it. And in terms of a good old boy style, let's call it provincial and antiquated. And it just needs to be reshaped into something that can adapt to the times. And thus far, I've not seen any adaptation at all.
That's our biggest problem.
And since, all three of us here have a relative good amount of experience in the private sector, what we're talking about here is raising the cost of new development for the future, right? With these impact fees. Okay. So what does Amazon do when that happens? Are they going to not build that close to the port just because there's a $750,000 impact fee on it? That's not true. What they're going to do is they're going to pay it, and then the goods coming out of there are going to be $1.25 more expensive when I check out at Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. We are advocating that we should not be concerned about the consumers and prices. We should be concerned about the quality of life here in town. It's like if you build it, they will come. We built that port. We gave it away to the state in 95, John. We took port container fees off. Now it's the most competitive port, and it's bailing out the shipping crisis that's going on right now in a lot of ways. We've only got 8 or 9 ships off the coast. Los Angeles Long Beach has 70 ships waiting to get into their port.
It is going to double. That.
It's going to. So again, what is the value of it doubling without any revenue from these new developments? And so specifically sticking with impact fees here, we've got the state policy issue that needs changing, but a lot of what you talked about was SPLOST dollars. And so there are a lot of things that your SPLOST dollars are spent on that impact fees can pay for, right? And so a lot of what I explain to people is the nuance of this impact fee thing. Impact fees are about budget add backs, right? If you are now collecting $2.2 million in impact fees a year, that's $2.2 million from SPLOST funding that's now freed up for you to go back to the community, hold another referendum vote, and let's get this money spent towards quality of life projects to mitigate the cost of that growth.
Yes, quality of life. You said it. And also, the thing is, they're coming from two different places. The SPLOST is a tax on the residents, and the impact fees is a tax per se on new development. And you brought up a good point, is that, for example, there's a warehouse that's been voted in, and I'm not in there. I'm not the incumbent. I would like to get in there, and unfortunately, I would have liked to have been in there at the time. And it's because of stormwater runoff. Now, I know I seem like I'm going off topic, but I'm really not. It may flood out in historically Black, older neighborhood, historical neighborhood in Port Wentworth.
This is Meinhardt, is that right?
Yeah, Meinhardt.
Yes.
And what could have been done if there were impact fees, or if there were people who, I say this again, have a holistic 30,000 view and says, okay, all right, we need warehouses. We need quality of life. How do we balance that? And perhaps you could have brought a new set of eyes on to look at it and say, okay, before we build it, let's do some things to mitigate the issues that it's going to cause this historically Black neighborhood. Or let's make sure there's just so much that can be done if you think outside the box. And the impact fees help that. And also just having a seat at the table, having an adult at the table in the beginning. It's not a yes or no vote. It's let's get the best deal for both of us. I mean, that's what business is all about, is a meeting of the minds. And that's what should have been done. And would that warehouse been built in the same place? I'm not an engineer. I don't know. But you have to, like you said, and you have to, I think everybody, I think the developers too, they don't want to fight. They want the best deal they can get. The city wants the best deal, should want the best deal it can get. And you really should go for a meeting of the minds. You accept your growth, but you manage it. Smart growth.
Well said. Well said. Impact fees, just so the viewers understand this, are not a new novel concept. They were passed by the Georgia legislature, I think, in the early 1990s. Today, over 60 Georgia counties and municipalities.
It's more than that now. It's closer to 100 now.
Okay. Have adopted this revenue policy to protect their residents so that they don't have to arbitrarily increase millage rates. They say, if you want to come here and do business, this is the cost of doing business. If you want to relocate here and buy a house, that impact fee is built into the cost of the house. So
it affects nobody who's already there. And I think a point I'd like to make here is that you're running for a nonpartisan election in one of the most politically diverse municipalities of Johnson County.
Yes.
I mean, there are lots of voters on both sides of the aisle there.
Yes.
This issue on impact fees is a nonpartisan issue, guys. Okay.
I happen to agree.
Bryan County, Bryan County, Richmond Hill, Effingham County, Rincon, all have impact fees. Okay. These are counties that voted 75 to 80% for Donald Trump. Okay. This isn't about Donald Trump. This is about what is the best case policy practices for municipalities and for your city. This is not a partisan issue. It only becomes a partisan issue when you are a politician who is beholden to developers because maybe that's how you feel you get elected. And I mean, I've seen people who didn't get elected with help of developers and still turn around and give them what they want. So I think your experience in the private sector with, by the time this will have premiered, we'll have interviewed a bunch of people, and a lot of the other candidates have a lot more deeper ties to Port Wentworth, and so they have that community feel, and you kind of bring that tough, solid private sector experience that will balance it out. In the same way, John, like how we say on Tybee Island, that Elaine Magruder, who served in Atlanta and is former lawyer, retired lawyer, her and Matt Kitchens, who's a basically a lifelong resident there, them two together as a team, would be a great catalyst for change, because you've got somebody who can maintain the local connections and the heart of the city while bringing in some new blood that's got the professional experience to maybe see the change through.
I love that. I love that. And you know what else you get from that is sometimes you don't see the forest for the trees. You need someone to come in with fresh eyes to give fresh ideas. Years ago, I had a client, and I'll never forget this. He told me that he loves to hire young people right out of school, no experience. And I said, why is that? He said, no one has told them yet that things are impossible.
Right.
He said, I'm never going to hear, no, I can't, because. Yeah. And I that stuck with me. And it's true. You have to think outside the box, and you have to look at problems in a different way. What I'm going to bring is different experiences. There are people who are on the city council, and the mayor is not challenged, so he's going to be on the city council, who've been there their whole lives or multiple generations. And I respect that, and I will call on that. And defer to the knowledge of people. Thomas Barbie has been here a long time. Julius Hall is still very active in the community and has a lot of very forward-thinking ideas that I agree with. And I'm going to call on all the nobody's an island. Nobody works alone. And I defer to people who have been here longer than me, but also I've sat at the tables with some of these developers, and I'm not intimidated. I also know everybody wants to walk out of there with a meeting of the minds.
Gotcha. It just occurred to me that if you were to write a synopsis of this election and the current situation, it isn't an election over preserving the status quo any longer. This is an election because Port Wentworth is changing and will continue to change. And the question becomes, are you going to maximize fairly and efficiently that growth and that change? Or are you just going to let it go, willy-nilly, unattended, half-time, part effort? And I don't think where the city's at, that's the right course. The right course is to suit up and staff up for the challenge that the city faces.
That is one of the best analysis of what's going on with the city. Good. That growth is willy-nilly. I like that. I'm going to steal that. Okay. But it's true. Growth is here, and we have to embrace it. And diversity is here in the city, and we have to deal with it. And it's really hard running out large because I will, and I hope I'm elected and will be able to represent the whole entire city, the city at large, the downtown, the north side. It's difficult. It's very difficult because, as you were saying, they're very, very diverse, and their needs are diverse. But if you look across America, there are some municipalities that have done very, very creative things and integrated like an historical downtown area with a growing residential area. And I'm not saying that's necessarily it, but, put me at the table. I have a lot of ideas, and I think the two sides can be well thought of. Also, the other thing is, I told someone this yesterday. You were talking about how politically diverse it is. Potholes are not Republican or Democrat. When you get down to residential municipal politics, it's about potholes, it's about sewage spills, it's about who's cleaning out the culverts, and if they're being cleaned out. There's not a lot of political ideology down in the grassroots there. Yeah. And one of the things I found downtown, which really did shock me. I invite you to drive through downtown and see how many signs I have. I have a lot of support downtown, and probably twice as much, because a lot of people are hesitant to put my sign up, but they said, we're going to vote for you, but just don't leave your sign in my yard. So I got a lot of time. And
That's the Ivy phenomenon.
oh yeah, probably. The reason is very simple. The service part of public service. Over and over and over again, I hear people say, I call this city. I call all the different people in this city. I call my at-large number. I call this person. I call that person. I email. I don't get my emails returned, my phone calls returned, or they'll say, well, it's a subcontractor, go talk to Clearwater. As a business owner, I have used subcontractors. If my client came to me and said, I have a problem on the job, I'm not going to point my finger and say, go see my subcontractor. The buck stops here. The buck stops here. And if a resident called me, I would not direct them to the subcontractor. And I sure as heck would return their call or return their email as quickly as I could to address the issue. And downtown culverts is a big issue. Flooding, culverts not being cleaned out regularly or not being deep enough. So the homes flood. I believe that the customer is king. That's how I grew up. Both
I just think
in business, and the residents are my customers. You
mentioned, Joe, about, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you mentioned about how the more local you get with politics, it's not partisan. And I tend to, the partisan divide I see is, are you with the residents or are you with the winners? And that's this winners take all philosophy, is that managing the growth of Port Wentworth the next decade, along with the Port of Savannah, which we're going to talk about next, and developers making maximum 100% profits, that can't go together, right? And so a lot of people will talk in this win-win kind of, like, oh, we can do this and do this, and a lot of times the choices aren't that, they're not nuanced. It really is, development's going to have to cost more for the next decade than it did the last decade, right? If you want to be here, the private sector will adjust to that new market trend, right? Once you put the impact fee policy in place, maybe development slows, right? So if you guys were doing, for example, 1,000 permits a year, right? And then you only go to 975 permits. Market world people will tell you that's a loss, right? You're still getting 975 permits pulled a year. You're just not getting 1,000 anymore, right? Like, you're still growing. You're just not growing as fast.
Well, you're
right?
growing equitably, even though you've
Correct.
lost 5.
That's
correct. And again, like, a lot of this politics around this policy of impact fees gets convoluted right now in Savannah. I mean, they are butchering it to death at the staff level. They are determined to just give the developers the money right back in some convoluted way. And that can't happen with these policies. It's a waste of time then, right? You've got to extract that revenue up front. That makes it more expensive to develop. Again, home prices are going up. It's not going to hurt the people who are already there, just the people who are coming next. It will still come, regardless of whether you put the impact fee policy in place. The development, the growth, it's going to come. The only question is it going to take another 7 years to double? Or if we put these policies in place, maybe it'll take 10 years to double, right? That's not a loss for the long-term residents, okay? It makes the profit a little bit longer. There'll be people who are investing are going to have to.
It makes a more balanced community and lay of the land, Chuck. It's a small reduction with a huge gain on the other side. And I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example because we're so closely watching the Tybee elections, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Their biggest issue is short-term vacation rental overload.
That's it.
48% of all the residential structures on the island are now short-term vacation rentals. Now, that did not happen in the last year or two. Okay.
Yeah.
That happened 6, 7, 8 years ago. It started
over time.
And they kicked the can, the government, the city council, kicked the can down the road, not wanting to deal with it for all the reasons Chuck mentioned earlier. The industry was taking the right people to lunch and yada, yada, yada. So they're now the entire community has said we're 3,500 people, but on any given day we've got 15 to 20,000 extra. So that's, but my point is, this is what you don't want to let happen with your growth in Port Wentworth. And I don't know where it's
Absolutely.
going to come, but this is the time. Once the horse is out of the barn, like at Tybee, it is almost impossible to get the horse back in the barn. So planning, fairness, equity, thoughtfulness this is the time, this is the place, and you sound like the right person.
Yeah, Joe, I want to move on to. Oh, sorry, you broke up for just a second there. I want to move on to the city of Port Wentworth's relationship with Georgia Ports Authority and the port, because the reason for these warehouse developments is because, the funding from the federal government being approved over the last 8 years is deepening the port. It's expanding. They have a ton of yard space left. It is going to double in capacity over the next 8 years, whether or not we like it. You mentioned before the show that the city of Port Wentworth doesn't even have a liaison.
Nope.
To
not
the
that I
Georgia
know of
Ports
it. And
Authority.
remember, I'm an outsider.
Sure, I'm sure the mayor would consider himself a liaison of sorts, but there's not a deep relationship there. And one of our core kind of policy, because Better Savannah is just guided by core sets of policies: term limits, impact fees, port container fees, reining in, making sure SCAD pays their fair share. 3 or 4 more issues after that. But I mean, those are the core principles that nothing's going to change at the micro level in these municipalities until the overarching deal changes. And so we have people in Savannah who are advocating for this, people in Tybee who are advocating for this. And the more we can get these other municipalities and the county on the same page, I think the more likely we are to strike a deal with Georgia Ports Authority. How much of a burden will it be for Port Wentworth citizens for the port to double its capacity while giving no recurring revenue to the municipalities like Garden City from Port Wentworth, where you're looking to represent?
With not giving any recurring, look at where we're located. Not only we're nestled between the second largest port on the East Coast, which will very soon be the largest port on the East Coast, the Savannah Airport, and north and south, enormous developments. A lot of them are Freeport developments, and then a lot of traffic that comes through from Effingham. We will grow. You're right, and the ports are going to double. And without some planning and some funds and some port container fees or whatever you want to call them, we don't have the budget to handle all of that. It's growth is a mixed bag, because the growth that comes from the ports also pays the salary of many of the people who live here. So it's a mixed bag, but we have to have a nice place to live as well as a nice place to work. And the only way we can do that is, I absolutely agree. They should pay their fair share. We have traffic that's unbelievable. The wear and tear on the infrastructure is a lot. There's just so much. And for example, really just much smaller, on a much smaller basis. I lived years ago in a home that in an area that boomed. Okay. And it had this beautiful lake in the area. We used to pay $100,000 per year to get the lake dredged because of all the development, because of stormwater runoff. And when there's a loss of permeable land and it becomes impermeable, the water's got to go somewhere, and it goes down and down and down until it winds up in my lake. And so I experienced it a number of years ago. And so I had been thinking about the impact fees for a few years, mainly because of that. I said, why should I pay $100,000, the HOA, not me, but why should we pay $100,000 to get our lake cleaned every year? So I feel the same way as someone who hopefully will represent the city of Port Wentworth is. Absolutely. We love growth. We're going to, we need to know what's going on. So we need a liaison, an official liaison there. And I'm planning to be that if I'm elected. And we need a heads up. We need to deal closely with the Georgia DOT, because, you know, we got state roads going through our city. And so we can't just in them. But all of these things we want to do without recurring revenue, as you just said, Chuck, it's impossible. We don't have that kind of budget.
And it's the same thing with the development, like for warehouses and single family residents, you know, for residents too. Like it's coming, right?
Yeah.
So we're doing 4 million container units right now at the Port of Savannah, and that's going to go to 8 million, right? So, you know, if it takes an extra year and a half to get to 8 million because we put $5 container fees per container on there, like that's not a real loss, you know, like it's going to come.
Well,
and by the way,
fair.
Well, it's not only fair from a moral fiduciary point of view from the locals here, it's a fair market fee, John. I mean, you know, it's $48 a container in Los Angeles, Long Beach, and that's the busiest part of the world. Yes, it's $48 per container there.
I didn't know that.
And they got 70 ships anchored off the coast waiting to get in.
Yep.
To go pay that $48, right? So you're telling me if we put $5 from zero, that we're now out of the market? How can you say that? So I just think from a market perspective and from a moral perspective, it's the right thing to do.
Thank you.
And we need leaders from all the municipalities that are affected and from the county and in the delegation standing up for this issue. Now, I don't know what it is with the men, you know, but we've got a lot of women stepping up for office in town.
Yeah,
you know, for the first time in history, we have a majority female city council in Savannah, right? There's a female mayor of Tybee Island. There's a female mayor of Buller. You know, we've got 2 women, you know, running for state house, and we're supporting one of them in Sabrina Kent, right? You know, who is a strong progressive woman. She is a payroll clerk for the longshoremen who is in complete support of a port container fee to help the locals. Absolutely. I just think that the bigger this coalition can be on this issue, the more likely it is. I do think we need probably a new governor. I don't think this current governor will allow anything like that to happen. But I think if a coalition of all of Chatham County is on the same page in the near future on this issue, we can come together and get the port to put their fair share into the local economy here, into the local government structures here.
I'll tell you what. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Right.
I tell you what. I think perhaps one of the reasons this hasn't happened and the growth has been willy-nilly, and there is, you know, there are no container fees, is I think this whole area, not just Port Wentworth, but very much so Port Wentworth, but the whole area has grown so fast that a lot of the current municipal city councils, it's outgrown them. It's outgrown their experience. It's outgrown the experience of the people who are currently sitting. I know for a fact in Port Wentworth City Council, so it's become bigger than them, and you need people who have big experiences to come in and sit at these tables, and that's probably why is that kind of thinking, your kind of thinking. It's just not there. It's just not there because the city outgrew its city council. And
we can't rely on the same old people. Like, you know, Savannah and Chatham County have like a lot more appointments to boards and stuff than you guys do, you know? So like, you know, to the regional, you know, ones. And so like, we keep telling, like, you can't keep having a rotating door, you know, the same people in and out. These problems have outgrown them too. Yeah. So not just the elected officials, but the people who are on boards and authorities. You've seen a massive turnover in your local planning commission over the last 5 years with a lot more people like Gabrielle Nelson we had on the other night, you know, who are forward thinking and have the local experience as well to know why it needs to change since the times are changing. I just, you know, Leo Beckman is the director of government affairs at Georgia Ports Authority. He worked for Jack Kingston for many years. You know, they know that this is coming. You know, yeah. They know that we're going to keep demanding this. And, you know, again, I think if all of the local municipalities and the county government and the delegation are all on the same page in the near future, it's going to have to, because sooner or later, we're just going to stop doing anything as a local government to support the growth. We're going to have to, because they won't pay their fair share. And that's the recipe for disaster. I'm not trying to hurt the port here. I'm just trying to get them to pay their fair share. I'm not trying to take SCAD down in Savannah. I'm just trying to they're going to grow. They're going to grow. They did already. They're going to continue to grow. I'm just asking them to pay their fair share from now on. That's all.
I wonder, and you may know the answer to this, why the longshoremen are in favor of a container fee. My guess might be, I'm just throwing this out there, because the warehouses affect the quality of life because they live there. The people who work there live there, and maybe they're seeing it. They're seeing that it's great to have a great job, but you need a great place to live.
Can I tell you my theory? I'm from Detroit. My grandfather was a socialist magazine writer and union guy through and through. You know, I will tell you. Okay, so if we're going to double the capacity of the port, right, that means that ILAs have to double too. And if you have to double your membership, now you're responsible for those guys getting hours. They don't want to do that. Why would they want to do that? They're already responsible for 3,000 members now. They have to grow to 6. What happens when the economy changes in the future, right? Then you have to be responsible for that growing membership's hours, you know? So, like, I think steady as she grows growth is what they would prefer, rather than these giant 10 and 15% leaps. Every 6 months, we hit a record of TEUs done in a month at that port. Right. Wow. You know, I mean, we're over 4 million, which is a yearly record for the year this year. You know, it's not going to slow down, you know, and so we can either be collaborative partners or we won't. And, you know, we just have to show that our bottom line as local governments, our line in the sand is here, you know, and if you're not going to come meet us in the middle, you know, the next time you need a road, something rezoned for somebody, it's just going to keep going fail. And until that happens, right, on a consistent basis, I'm not sure the structural change we're looking for is going to happen on the big regional level, but it starts with each of these races. And Port Wentworth seems to be kind of, John, just like Tybee is this pinnacle of tourism issue, of overgrowth of tourism.
Yeah, they hit a tipping point.
Right. They hit a tipping point, and we're dealing with that in Savannah too. Sure. Right. And we're also dealing with the logistics and the traffic and the congestion and the overgrowth of logistics industry. And that's the main issue here in Port Wentworth. So I do like bringing these shows to our core audience of Savannah, because I think it's important for you to know what your neighbors are going through directly and how it affects you as well.
Chuck, I just want to add something.
Yeah.
You were talking about logistics, and I forgot to mention to you, one of the last companies I owned, is a logistics company. We were a last mile delivery company for a major supplier. So I know logistics as well. And so somebody like me interacting with the Georgia ports would, I think, be only beneficial to our city.
Sure, you understand the system and the nuts and bolts. Absolutely.
Yep. Absolutely. Go ahead, John.
Joe, let me ask you a fundamental policy question about government and structure. We have advocated since the jump for term limits, and here in Savannah, the mayor is term limited to 2 terms, 8 years. The county chairman of the commission is limited to 2 terms, but we think that ought to apply to all members of local government. Do you have a position on that?
I do, because one thing, and you mentioned this earlier, is there are a lot of people here who have been here a long time. Well, my opponent grew up here, was on the planning commission for 20 years, is now at the end of her first term as an at-large member. And how's that working for you? You know, how's that working for you? So I think maybe new ideas are needed. Yeah, I think term limits brings in new ideas, new ability, out of the box thinking, and a different pair of eyes on a problem.
Perfect. It also, I like to use the metaphor of a circuit breaker. And when you have just administration after administration not doing anything, when you hit that circuit breaker and your term is up, I mean, you're going to get somebody new. And I understand that, term limits is a rotten idea if you're talking about John Lewis, but it's a great idea if you're talking about Mitch McConnell. Okay. And there's far more Mitch McConnells, unfortunately, than there are John Lewis's. It could be 2 terms. It could be 3 terms. And I'll also point out that your opponent lives in a district also, right?
Well, it's at large. So yes, she lives downtown.
So she could, if she was term limited and she wanted to still serve.
Oh, I see.
For her district or mayor.
You're right.
It's not preclusionary.
No, I mean, we've told people, this is the same thing in Savannah, John. Like, you could do 2 terms in a district, 2 terms at large, 2 terms mayor. That is 24 years. That is a generation. That's a generation.
Yeah. You need you need institutional knowledge. You need institutional knowledge to carry through. So you certainly don't want too much turnover, because that institutional knowledge is very important. But
no, I think 1 term is ridiculous. I think that's not good. No, I agree with that. I think 2 terms
staggered correctly.
Staggered terms. That's true.
Solution to preserving your institutional knowledge base.
Honestly, that's probably the thing Port Wentworth has right that Savannah has wrong. We elect our entire council and mayor at the same time, and we just turned them all over. We turned 7 out of 9 seats over, and it's been an issue, obviously. Now, there's some trickery and some responsibility that falls on Mayor Van Johnson's shoulders about that, which we can have discussed at length at other episodes. You're happy to check those out. But, I think the staggered terms in Port Wentworth is an idea we may need to take up in Savannah very soon.
Most cities should do that. Most boards that I've ever been on, it's a staggered term, because you can't lose all that institutional knowledge at once, and too many problems. But yet you bring in the fresh ideas.
Right.
All right, let me ask the CETA question.
Please do.
And Joe, I can just imagine your position, but I'll wait to hear it from you. The Savannah Economic Development Authority is a state identity, and it has the power to issue bonds, abate property taxes for a municipality, the county, and the schools. Their mission is to bring in new businesses to our community, and the premise of the deal is you're going to bring in a widget manufacturer. It's going to create 250 jobs, and the average salary or hourly pay is $18 or $19 an hour. That all shakes out real nice. Then the question becomes, how much bonding might you need? How long are we going to abate your taxes? Is it going to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? Is it going to be 60% abatement, 40%? Anyway, as a business person, you understand that the art of this deal is, what are you bringing and what are you getting? And when those deals get made, there's an expectation, because you're not paying all your property taxes, you're getting loans, you're getting all your permitting and planning fast-tracked. There's an expectation. And our Savannah Economic Development Authority does not go back and verify that the jobs that we're committed to, or the goodies, the abatements, and the bonds, are ever achieved. Now, we know this because when we asked CETA, this is a fantastic annual report. You created 2,900 jobs at an average salary of $45,000. How did you come to these data points? And they say client projections. Don't hold that.
Good deal if you can get it.
Yeah. And when they're pressed to say, could we not verify that? Their answer is no, that's proprietary information.
Oh my.
Yeah. Now, I'll tell you that every economic development authority worth its salt, whether it's in North Carolina, South Carolina, New Jersey, Connecticut, wherever it is, they write into their deals a independent audit requirement. Both parties agree to it. And after the first year and a half, if the client is slightly under producing, they're gently reminded that they need to up their game a little bit. If after another 12 months pass and they're still deficient, there's a clawback clause. That's the actual language. Sounds terrible, but it is what it is. It's an adjusting factor.
Yeah.
So that you can then calibrate all the incentives against the commitment and whether it was achieved or not. So, long explanation, but do you see the reasonableness and the logic behind independent audits of particularly bigger seated deals so that the taxpayers are assured that these deals are producing what they're supposed to produce?
It's very interesting that you asked me that question because you're going to laugh when I tell you this, but I lived through the Braves coming to Cobb County. I was living in Cobb County when the Braves came. That split our county. It's very difficult. And
it's an all Democratic county commission now too, I think.
Well, this was a number of years ago.
Yeah.
When the Braves first came,
Right.
and moved their stadium up. And that was a big issue. And it was really the first time that I thought about that, because we also had an economic development, and we had an organization that would an economic development group that would buy properties, and because they're nonprofit, and this happens, I'm sure you're very familiar with it, they then give a lease to the company for X number of years, and then nonprofits don't pay taxes. They don't pay land taxes. So that was a way around it. I started learning about that. I learned about all of that during that whole time. And one thing that kept coming up is, okay, you say you're going to add 500 jobs. Are they minimum wage jobs? Are they executive jobs?
Right.
What happens if you don't? And how can you prove it? And I found out that a lot of places don't do good audits on that, or don't do any audits on that. So that was something that I really came to be familiar with back then. And I believe if you say you're as a business owner, if I say I'm going to do X, I have to prove that I'm doing X. I mean, what is the ROI?
Let me follow up on this issue, because a couple of evenings ago, Alfonso Rabot, who's a candidate for District 1, stated that it might be time for Port Wentworth to pull out of CETA as a whole and start their own development authority that would negotiate on their behalf, because I found out, John, there are 2 active CETA deals in Port Wentworth right now. All right. Crossroads Business and another one right down the road. Okay. So, that's revenue that is going to CETA and not going to you guys for the bonds that they got. And you're not getting the tax revenue as well. Right. So, it's kind of a thing where I used to have this question where I would ask, the structure of the board of directors of CETA is currently set up. There are 3 ways to get appointed. The county gets the first appointment, Chatham County government. So the county commission, which represents everybody, theoretically. The city of Savannah gets the second appointment, which is the city council of Savannah. And the board itself gets the third appointment. So that's that rotating. You laugh, like people who are in our world, like in the corporate world, laugh at that. Like, what? They just appoint themselves back on?
That's what they're doing.
Must be nice,
Simple.
So, like I said, at any given time, a third of that board is just super institutional, and like you said, the politicians, the issues have outgrown them. It's outgrown those board appointees too. Now, I've advocated, excuse me, for maybe Port Wentworth and Pooler to get a rotating appointment to that board.
Absolutely. I've also advocated for that. Not rotating. I think we should have, again, a seat at the table. That's something I am pushing for. Because if they're going to be in our city and depriving us of land taxes, then we should sit at that table. And that's one thing. That's another reason I'm running. I mean, I agree with you on so many of these points. And I think I bring the skills and experience to be that person at
I think, look, the more council people that are elected at the municipal level that are reaching out to the delegation, these are the people you're going to want to work with. Carl Gilliard, Lester Jackson, Ron Stevens. Those are the people that represent that area and just beyond your area that I think, John, look, when the Savannah Economic Development Authority was created, it was born out of the Port Authority, right? They took it out of the Port Authority in the early 80s and spun it off as its own Economic Development Authority, I think, when Al Scott was in the Senate, okay? And the idea back then was that, well, the growth was really just Savannah still. Right? I mean, Port Wentworth was mostly farms in the 80s, right? Land use wise.
That's it, yeah.
Right. And then,
growing lands for international paper. That's all West Chatham was when I moved here, Chuck, was mostly loplolly pines for the paper mill. They're sustainable forest, a subdivision of international paper.
Yeah, I'm sure North Point Real Estate got its hands on all that at some point in between there, but that's a super inside knowledge for you there. All I can say, John, is that I feel that this election that we're dipping into is just so fascinating because it's just such a microcosm of the regional issue. And when you talk about CETA, when it was created, like I said, it was just Savannah's growth. Now it's a regional focused economy. Yeah, they've completed the West Chatham super site now, like that's done. Now they're doing a Bryan County super site with the state on a new authority, and Savannah's kind of helping out with that. And like, I just feel like they've missed the boat on the local stuff. And as much as we attract outside investment, why aren't we trying to help current companies that are already here expand? That's also a question I've always wanted to know the answer.
As a small business owner, I applaud you for that. Thank you. Also, another issue too about that is the super sites is you don't necessarily, people who work there don't necessarily live there. We experience this all the time in Effingham, from Effingham. We're a pass through from Effingham.
Right.
So you just may make some communities, more communities pass through like we are. So there's a ripple effect that happens. And if absolutely it's outgrown its mission. One thing, it's just so interesting you brought that up, because one thing I have been talking about is every development area, that development board that affects Port Wentworth, we have to be a seat at the table. And I want to be that adult seat at that table looking out for Port Wentworth. It's because if it affects us, it affects our tax base, it affects our infrastructure, it affects everything.
Well, maybe if you're not successful, maybe there's another way to skin this cat, and perhaps you could erect toll gates or toll roads just outside the port.
That'd be great,
right? And get it a different way.
I hear you. I want to end our conversation tonight on kind of an issue that was one of the biggest striking differences in our forums, for the other district seats, especially the District 1 race, which is an open seat, right? There's no incumbent at all. Nobody's even on that seat right now at all. No. And that's kind of the issue of the reputation of the Port Wentworth Police Department. Okay. Port Wentworth has these historic African-American neighborhoods, I mean, generations, And Alfonso Rabeau seemed to think that, I haven't experienced any negative interaction. It must not be an issue. And we had Gabrielle Nelson, who's running for District 1 on as well, who has lived there 13, 14 years now, and really expressed what I think a lot of the current trends of social politics are, that this issue is real and it needs addressing. Longtime friend of the show, founder of the ATR network, Julius Hall, was making this a huge issue before he couldn't run anymore. Yes, that this is the reputation of Port Wentworth. It's Mayberry, and don't you dare go over 1 mile over there, or else you're gonna get pulled over, because that's how we get our revenue. What's What's the deal with the reputation? What do you think needs reforms there? What are your thoughts?
Well, remember when we talked earlier about being newer to the area than someone like a Gabrielle Nelson? I'm not running against Gabrielle, but I'm just using, or my opponent. Okay. And I said that I plan on looking to people who are mentors. Thomas Barbie is a mentor to me. Julius Hall is a mentor. And also I really admire and support a lot of the issues, his platform, and he may not be running, and that's a whole nother issue, but the platform is still very strong and very forward thinking. And one of the things that he talks about all the time is police. Now, I'm not in there. I'd love to be in there. As a non-incumbent, there's a lot that I don't know, but I do hear the stories just like you do over and over and over again. I hear it every day. So the biggest thing I hear is the chief. I have to get in there. I have to look at it. I have to look at the data. I have to, you can't go on stories. I totally believe my friends who are telling me these stories. But why is it? Is it training issue? Is it the chief? Is it, management? Is it
Are you paying
improper management? And maybe
are the salaries good enough to attract the caliber of people that the city deserves? I don't know.
I don't even know. But one thing is if it is the chief, which I've heard a number of times, and again, I have to look into it.
You'll wait.
Perhaps just replacing the top manager. My grandmother had this old expression: "A fish stinks from the head down," and there's a personality to every company. There's a personality to every police department, and that personality comes from the chief.
Sure.
So is that the issue? Let's look at that and let's see what happens if we change management. Will the ripple effect occur? Will people realize that some of these practices are no longer accepted? It's absolutely something that I'm looking at.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're not going to prejudge anything, but you've acknowledged the significant amount of conversation and attention to the subject, and a reasonable person says, "Hey, when I'm elected, I'm going to find out firsthand and then formulate a cogent response."
And also, I have actually experienced it firsthand. I don't know, you guys know about what happened with the signage war, what they are calling.
I've heard, yes. So, and this is starting to be picked up by some regional and state media that they're using an old ordinance to go on to people's private property even and try to take signs. Is that right?
Well, here's what it is. Okay. And there was an article that appeared today. I just put it on my Facebook page. So people want to go to my Facebook page and look at it. I don't know if that ordinance really exists. She did a lot of research, the author, but supposedly there was an ordinance that said no more than one political sign on the lawn. But she's saying that may not be so. Regardless, okay, if the ordinance of one sign only does exist, it has never been enforced. Never once been enforced. Okay.
Until now.
They're really running scared, huh?
Well, there's a reason.
Hit dog will holler, right?
And then on top of that, okay, what caused a lot of fear, true fear, in a lot of my supporters were the police were walking onto their lawns and pulling up signs without permission, without talking to them, without knocking on the door, just walking onto their front lawns and choosing which signs to pull up. Now think about this. If there's 3 or 4 signs there and they're told to leave one, you know where I'm going with this.
Sure.
By choosing whose signs to be left. So that's weaponizing the police on your political enemies. That's really what the mayor did.
That city manager has a lot of explaining to do.
I don't know who's behind it. If it's the city manager.
Well, the city manager is responsible. The police chief
but they're
reports
all
to them.
Pointing the finger at each other.
Exactly. It's who done it,
Yeah, nobody wants to say that. Yeah, but it is.
I think wrapping up our week at Port Wentworth, John, I can sum it up in this. There is some great local institutional people running as challengers. Gabrielle Nelson, Janet, Hester. These are people who have been there a long time, you know, and are definitely in the forward-thinking camp. And then you've got these recalcitrant incumbents who've do-si-doed and changed over a couple of seats, and Brian Kemp and Governor Kemp had to get involved. And I mean, you know, you've got this kind of whole like hold the line, and I think it's just kind of over for that old guard. And I think that good local community leaders like these other candidates I just mentioned, along with somebody like yourself who has good private sector experience in Atlanta, in and around the country, I think that, again, just like I was saying about on Tybee Island with Mackey Lane, John, I think it's just a really good team to change the direction of where Port Wentworth is headed. And that's what we call this kind of week, is the future of Port Wentworth. Go ahead, John.
It's policy, Chuck. Policy is the secret ingredient to a well-run government and a happy community. And what you just described is what we're seeing is this emergence of both some new, some longtime people who are advocating for policy that makes sense and makes a better community. It's a wonderful thing.
Well, Joe, I can't thank you enough for stopping by on our show and giving us a great hour and 10, 20 minutes here of just great content. Please feel free to share it with your supporters all around the social media. It might be able to pull up signs, but they can't pull up videos on Facebook. So real quick, just close us out. You know, give us some closing thoughts. You know, tell people. I see you've got your website in your name description here, so it's already been up the whole episode.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
But make sure people know how to get in touch with you. Otherwise, and just give us some closing thoughts.
And I'm also, there it is, www.joe4pw.com, as you see on the screen. Also on Facebook, it's Joe4PW, because that, you know, it matches, but also that's what I am. I'm for Port Wentworth as a whole. And what I like to say is that my business experience, Port Wentworth needs someone with business experience and someone who can be an adult seat at the table, because it seems like there's a lot of food fights going on right now. And I'd like to be that professional adult seat at that table to manage a city that's got $11-12 million budget and $30 million in reserve. And I also, one thing I don't know if I told you, I know very well how to deal with the federal, state, and local governments, because as you know, our money coming forward is going to be pandemic relief. It has been, and we've missed some of it. We wouldn't have if I were in there. I know how to get this money.
Good. So pleased that you were able to come on the show and talk policy and platforms. And we look forward to an election here in a couple of weeks. And we wish you the best of luck.
Absolutely.
Early voting started.
It's already started. Mosquito control is probably like the closest to you guys.
Yes.
And I hope people will take advantage. But November 2nd is the election day. So again, we just can't thank you enough for stopping by. And John and I will close out the show here and for a few more minutes, and we'll be in touch with you very shortly. Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you soon. Oh, that was great. Another great interview, John. Closing out this week at Port Wentworth here. It seems kind of like where Savannah was in 2019.
Well,
on the precipice of major change, maybe.
The more time we spend talking to the candidates and understanding the issues, the more enthusiastic and excited I am for it.
Yeah. Well, let's do a little housekeeping, man. You know, this is episode 63. By now, you know, we've done District 1, District 3, and the at-large. We're going to add in one more municipal forum, and by the time this premieres, we'll have recorded it. But on Thursday, for our normal show slot, we're gonna broadcast the Future of Garden City Forum. Okay, so this is for Thursday, the 21st. During our normal 7 p.m. slot. We're going to record it beforehand, just like we did this episode. Our members will get access to episodes early, as they always do. And so if you like these candidates and these issues that we've been highlighting this last week in Port Wentworth, make sure to support us. You can go to www.bettersavannah.org, click the donate button. Every dollar that we're raising right now is going into some election somewhere in Chatham County.
Some important election.
Important elections. Tybee Island, the future of STVR regulation. House District 165, which really affects all of these municipalities indirectly. Port Wentworth, Garden City. These are important elections. And do you have one more thing, John? Do you have that flyer that you said you got, the East Bloss thing? I want to show this. Pull this up here. Okay, this is the election everyone's voting on. I'm voting no, but I know you're not going to get on the camera. But read out the group that sent this out, because this is the same group. I saw this in the Savannah Tribune. Okay. And Commissioner Tanya Milton, I might tag you in the comments just to see if you can answer this if you know. Who is this group? What is it called?
Okay, in 5-point type, it says paid for by Building Better Futures for Scholars.
Wow.
Never heard of them before.
What a name. So I called and I looked around. There's no filings anywhere on the Ethics Commission website. Now, I was told by the government that for a county referendum issue, you only have to disclose if you spend $25,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're an independent committee set up to be able to advocate in any race in Chatham County, basically at any time, right? Local, state. We do not do federal. Okay, we're only regulated by the state of Georgia. Better Savannah is, right? And we have to do these filings, and anybody who donates more than $100 has to be on our filings, right? And we have to continue to be able to do this, right? And we're spending pennies compared to this. But basically, as I understand it, you could get $24,999 together and blanket Chatham County with ads and mailers like this, and never have to disclose donors or how you spent the money. I just find that to be amazing. So when people come on talking about, oh, this is just the opinion of, one group. Yeah, a group with between John and I and our membership, which is growing. We picked up 2 members like just in the last couple of hours while recording today, John. Nice. We're talking about 100 years of institutional political knowledge in our group. This isn't like a bunch of newbies. It's not like we have a vested interest in these outcomes. John and I aren't petitioning these governments for anything anytime soon, right?
We're not candidates.
We're also not candidates. We're not taking any money off of this. We're raising money and trying to, shift the direction in a slightly better direction, which is why we're called Better Savannah. Not some drawn out, ridiculous name. What is that name again?
Hold on. It's Building Better Futures for Scholars.
Oh, man. Well, look, guys, that's ridiculous. But as you can see, we're in election mode right now. We've got a lot of episodes. Please go back and review. And please support us, bettersavannah.org. If you like the content and you want to support us to get on a really cool app, you can do Patreon. Patreon.com/BetterSavannah. We picked up a couple people there today. It's really easy. It's an app on your phone, and it's as little as $5 a month, guys. You get extra bonus content. You get early access to these shows like this before we release them to the public. And literally every dollar, when it costs 12 cents to contact someone on Facebook, it goes a long way. So please support. If you like this content and you want other content, especially if you're in, Savannah, please, support these following entities: the Savannian, independent journalists, group of people, Jim, Rachel, Sean, who left, Connect Savannah after many, many years. It's a subscriber-based online publication. Again, $5 a month. You get really good biting editorials, but also local news stories that you're not going to see anywhere else. Please support them. All the shows on ATR. Tell them, John, what are the shows on ATR? This is Julius Hall's network.
The Rabble is
Port Wentworth.
The Rabble's one of my favorites. that's a panel talk show. Then the couple older people that we love and adore have shows that are broadcast through ATR.
Alderwoman Keisha Gibson Carter and Alicia Miller Blakely, Mondays and Tuesdays. You can catch them
by us, for us.
Yes, on Alicia Miller Blakely's Facebook page.
We are cross-pollinated and cross connected, which is something that's in the almost 30 years I've been here, desperately needed in this town.
And what unites all these kind of disparate groups is just policies,
Absolutely.
like and here at Better Savannah, we are obviously going to advocate for who matches up with these policies the best.
That's the only way we're going to do it.
Correct. And so, you're probably, a lot of new viewers are seeing our content for maybe the first time. There's a lot of people who moved here in the last year or two. And because we're doing ads in your area, you're seeing us. And so, again, we're just an independent group of people with a membership group of about 30 almost now that want to see positive, better change in this area. And just like the Chamber of Commerce sets up their groups and the Central Labor Council, the labor, on behalf of organized labor sets up their groups, we're just another group of citizens that want to see this change. And so we hope that you value this content and you can subscribe to get even more. But also too, when is the Trainwrecks concert in Tybee, John?
I think it's this weekend, Chuck.
So if you missed it, membership group is live. Try to get out to Tybee if you want to go see them. Tybee Post Theater. I'm sure they'll have another show coming in the future. They are always amazing to us. They gave us that song to use, Song for Sally. It's our main kind of track, and so we always like to shout out everybody that helps us make this possible. And John, man, it's another great episode in the books, my friend.
Yep, it's busy.
Episode 63. I think, after this general election, we can get back to some more Savannah Morning News reading series and a little bit more council reviews. We are missing a couple of updates. There's a crime is on the loose in Savannah, John.
Okay.
We had a very tragic shooting at the Ross soccer fields.
Yeah.
If you've been in Savannah a long time, you'll know the irony, of Ms. Jennifer Ross, who was killed downtown here. We're now on 2 straight years of increased violence and crime in our city in Savannah, and this kind of business as usual majority on council is really going to have to show some progress real soon, or else we're gonna be in kind of a world of hurt here. But please continue to support. Our page, share, and you can share the content offline. If you copy the link, you can text it to somebody. They don't even have to have a Facebook. We're also on YouTube. You can look us up anytime there. And that's where this recording will broadcast on Tuesday, the 19th. So again, we'll be back on this Thursday for our last forum for Garden City. This will be another rebroadcast. That's the 21st. And then I think we'll have one more show, maybe 2, but probably one more show the week before the election. And I told you to start thinking about it, John. November 2nd, we're going to have to do another, I don't have the wig again. I don't know what happened to it, but we're going to have to do another live election night show, buddy. Okay,
well, we got a task force on affordable housing show that we need to.
I'd love to do that maybe the 28th. Let's try for that one. Try to take a break from elections right before the election night coverage try to do that. But also too, honestly, I feel like we should hold it because maybe we'll get better audience after the elections, like that wants to actually
just before the year's out. We need to scratch some alternative subjects like the housing task force.
Well, at this pace, there's going to be 30 more task forces. The literacy task force now. I thought we had a school board, but.
Well, also, I haven't seen it, but the results are out on the aluminum to-go cup study. So we got to push that.
Oh, God. Oh, please send me that report to read immediately. All right, guys. We'll see you in 2 days on Thursday for the Garden City Forum. Thanks for stopping by on Better Savannah's weekly show. Talk to you guys next time.
People are making money. They can spend more time at home with their children. We have less crime.
Right.
I am in support of anything that's going to increase the revenue flowing through Chatham County.
Opinion, Tabby hasn't managed growth very well. We still have a chance at bringing back our community. Tabby is definitely worth saving.
Don't you think it's time for the city of Savannah to have an honest tourism management plan? Let SCAB start paying its fair share? And the hospitality industry needs to increase its wages? The impacts of new growth should not cost residents. All local elected officials on council and commission should have term limits. We're working hard to accomplish these policies. We need your help. Please contribute whatever you can, $5, $10, or $20, by going to bettersavannah.org. Donate. Thank you.